Good morning, everybody. Hope you had a great night. I know we had a lot of fun. It was great to get together, reminisce with people that been on the boards and committees for many years. We got some longtime members in the room here today. With that in mind, I would like to take a moment and ask any past executive committee, any past officers to stand and be recognized, please. Yeah, that's you. We all owe these people a debt of gratitude for pulling this group together and keeping it going through some really hard times. We thank you. And how about some of the past board members? Do we have any past board members in the room? Joe? Yeah. Thank you. Okay, we'll get to rolling here this morning. Let's kick off the final day. We've got a busy day today. Got some committee meetings going on. We've got some good panel coming up. And then this afternoon, we'll do our general business meeting and get things closed up and be down. Hope y'all can come down to the celebration tonight down at the Buffalo Bill Center and enjoy yourselves. We will going to start this morning with a discussion on the effectiveness of advocacy and also with the storytelling, the sharing our story with people in the industry and out. We'll keep rolling along. But first thing, we'd like to take a minute and view our video here from Bear Crop Science.
Whoever named it cheatgrass really knew what they were saying. It cheats everything else out.
Cheatgrass for us, it comes on in the spring. We try and graze it early to try and get ahead of it. It seems like you can graze it every year and really pound it and pound it and pound it, but no matter what, it's coming back.
Well, cheatgrass is something that I've fought pretty much all my life, and tried different processes, burning the cheatgrass and then spraying it in the spring, before it, got to growing much. But, on large acreage, it's just not affordable. It's not manageable.
Rejuvera helps you take back your grass. It allows the native grasses to grow. My family's taught me that grass management was very important, and not always running more head of cows is more dollars. It's about keeping your grass good. You have good grass, your calves that you're gonna sell are gonna be bigger. Your cows are gonna be better. Rejuvera can help that immensely.
With Rejuvera, just solved all them problems. You just don't have to worry about it. It just saves you all kinds of time and money.
I got one more announcement to make. I was waiting a little bit until the young lady came into the room. I didn't want to do this with the better half being out in the hall. We got a couple here that are 2 days past their anniversary. And it was your 59th anniversary, Jim and Sucho. Jim, you're a lucky man. It's a good thing she was able to keep you in line this many years.
Congratulations to the Chiltons on 59 years, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the future here. So, all right. We want to thank Bear, the sponsor. The generous support of our sponsors make these annual meetings and great discussions like this wouldn't be the same without them. So let's give one more round for Bear. So. Now we'll have a brief announcement from Tipton Hudson.
Yeah, good morning. Good to meet you. I'm Tip Hudson, a range and livestock extension specialist for Washington State University, and I'm here to make a shameless plug to have you listen to the Art of Range podcast. The podcast is currently funded by a grant from the Western Center for Risk Management Education, and the 2022-23 grant is focused on ranch financial resiliency. I think this is particularly significant because rangeland-based livestock production is one of the only ag sectors where financial health is really truly tied to ecological health. Baxter Black liked to used to say that there is nothing that comes out of the end of a balling gun or a hypodermic needle that can compensate for subpar animal husbandry. And I think the same thing applies to land management. There's no amount of supplemental feed, herbicide, pharmaceuticals that can compensate for subpar land management and let you still make a profit. So we're running 1-hour episodes on the Art of Range podcast, trying to get at both environmental and financial sustainability. We just ran a couple episodes with James Rogers, formerly of the Wine Cup Gamble Ranch, Clay Warden, who's a consultant and rancher, and Jack Southworth, a rancher in Eastern Oregon, on ranch financial management principles. And yesterday's release was the first of 2 interviews with Stan Beavers of the King Ranch Institute, and a longtime financial consultant covering managerial accounting and key performance indicators. We'll be doing some in-person workshops around the West this winter, covering ranch finance and how to properly use livestock insurance products. And I'm working with WSR Insurance, CKP Insurance, and Farm Credit Services on this project because I don't know a thing about insurance. So stay tuned for locations and dates in a PLC email or a state association notice in the near future. And subscribe to the Art of Range through your favorite podcasting app. I've got some stuff on the table there. Please take a look at it, point your camera at it, and you can get to the homepage and then sign up using your smarty phone so you can get whatever the current release is as it comes out. The last thing I wanted to say is that it's not scientifically controversial that you are the people who make the world go round. There's an old Alabama song that says the fruits of your labor are worth more than your pay. And we won't make it long as a culture if we don't value what you do, both socially and economically. So thank you for what you do. And my goal is to help you do that better. Thank you.
You know, the majority of Americans today are at least 3 generations removed from life and growing up or on a farm or ranch. The disconnect between urban and rural residents, between city restaurants and grocery stores, shelves, and the men and women who grow our food is a divide that, we see firsthand in Colorado because the population has exploded and it's not the old cow town that it used to be. Even for families with young people on the ranch, multi-generational operations, communications can still at times be challenging. No matter how seasoned you might be, we all have to compete these days with the increasingly digital marketplace. We have to market our product and our way of life in order to not just make a living, but to defend against attacks from the outside on the industry. Here now to talk about these issues, we are joined by 3 professionals who each handle a different aspect of ag communications. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Sigrid to begin our discussion on growing more grazers.
Thank you, Mark. And if we could have Wendy and Kenny and Casey come up and join us, that would be great. So as Mark mentioned, the goal of our panel today is to dig a little bit into communications, advocacy and outreach as it exists today in the current environment that we're in. Most Americans are highly removed from agriculture and from the production systems that put food on the table. And even more are removed from the kind of work that federal grazing permittees do on public lands. So we're going to get into a good discussion here today about how we transmit those stories. And we have three women here today who have a high record of success in that area, and talk about some of those maybe more socially focused or maybe a little bit more intangible things that we can do to ensure the economic sustainability of ranching on public lands, making sure that we're winning the fight in public opinion as well as public policy. So I'm going to turn it over to our panelists to introduce themselves, but we're lucky today to have Wendy Pratt, Kenny Reese, and Casey Atkinson. So Wendy, I'll ask you to start us off and tell us a little bit about your operation.
Am I on? Thanks, everyone. She called me a professional. I don't know about that. We come from Southeast Idaho. We're in potato country is where our ranch is located. Cow-calf outfit that started in 1904. We're fourth generation. And we kind of stick out in our community. Most of our neighbors don't want cows on their ground. We're working on it, but we stick them out on the road and we walk them 45 miles to the high country along the Blackfoot River Road. And it's an old BLM trail right. I don't know how much longer we'll be able to do that, but we'll die trying, I think. Did you ask us how we got started?
Yeah, tell us a little bit about how you got started in advocacy, and maybe
Okay.
to get things rolling, you could each say a little bit about, what prompted you to start talking to a broader audience.
Okay, so a lot of you guys remember cattle free in 93. Yeah, those were ugly days. We, at the time, I don't think any of us really had the language. We didn't have the tools or the science to really fight back against that. And for my husband and I, it was sobering. And we dug in our heels. We took our first class in holistic management, started learning about ecosystem processes, improving our grazing strategies. The first advocacy really was just talking to our peers in the conservation world, in the research community, which was great, a great education. And I started my blog in, it's been a dozen years now, so 2010, as more of just a creative outlet. And it's worked. I mean, we all know that life is hard. Ranching is hard. And if I could look at the beauty in that and write about it, it really helped me. It was therapeutic. I think that's enough for me. Sigrid?
That's great. Thanks, Wendy.
Hi, everybody. Happy to be here. My name is Kenny Reese. I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications at Montana Stock Growers Association. I'm originally from Texas. I grew up on a small family farm. And from there, I graduated college from Texas Tech University with a degree in agricultural communications. And then I made the long trek up to Montana, and I've been here since 2019. In my position, I oversee our social media, all of our internal and member communications, external marketing, and I plan our mid-year meeting and annual convention. So I wear a lot of hats, but that is the beast of marketing. And so I would say to your question, what, kind of prompted me to become an ag communicator, I would say kind of the first time I noticed that shift is kind of a specific time in my life. I was in high school, a part of my FFA chapter, and I did a competition called Ag Issues, which is basically a public speaking competition where we as a group took an issue in agriculture. We really dissected that issue, and then we were judged on how well we could communicate that issue. So if any of you have children in the room and that is part of your FFA chapter, I highly suggest it, because that really did change my life. And during that competition, I kind of realized, I feel like we have a lot of people working on the issues diligently and they're doing a great job. But at that time, I feel like we didn't have a lot of people who are able to communicate those complicated issues like sustainability or antibiotics or, those kind of things. So I really took it upon myself to be like, I think I can do this and do it well, and really explain those issues to a consumer that is 3 or 4 generations removed, and even to, ranchers in the room who might now not have heard of this, from different areas of the country and that kind of stuff. So that's where I really got my passion from. And, where I went to college, they have a really great ag com program. And then now at Stock Growers, I get to do what I'm passionate about every single day and communicate to not only beef consumers, but the amazing work that Montana ranchers do every day.
Thanks, Kenny.
So I'm Casey Atkinson. I was raised on a commercial cow-calf operation in Southeast Wyoming. We've been there for a minute. My great-grandfather homesteaded part of the ranch in 1895, and we know that he was there for a little bit before that. On our operation, we have BLM, we have National Forest, we have state checkerboarded in amongst our deeded land. So we certainly have public lands as part of our operation. I took kind of a roundabout. I spent several years in Texas. I went to college just up the road from her in West Texas, had the opportunity to get quite an education in feedlots and wheat while I was in the Texas Panhandle. I then ventured up into Colorado. I was a livestock agent for several years in extension in Colorado. I knew in high school that this day was going to come. And so I've always known that while I didn't expect to be on the ranch, I was so deeply passionate about the people like my dad, who is here today, who did this for a living. And I wanted to be able to represent them. Because as he always said, even if you can't dazzle them with brilliance, maybe, honey, you could be good at baffling them with BS. And so hopefully we lend more towards brilliance than BS. But, communicating and talking has always been my passion. And so that was what I wanted to do somehow. But before social media became a thing, I was really scrambling to figure out how to do that. And so when I was in extension, I had the opportunity to write a monthly column in an area newspaper that was advocacy focused. I then conned my local radio station into doing a monthly radio program that we actually won a national award for and was broadcast out over several radio stations across Colorado, where I could advocate for the beef industry and do different things. But when we lost my brother a few years ago, it created the unfortunate opportunity for me to return home full-time to the family ranch. And that's really, I think, where my advocacy took off, because I wasn't just talking the talk, but I was now walking the walk. And I'm a huge fan of Instagram and Facebook. And so I literally just share my life every single day with people around the world. It always surprises me where my followers find me from and the questions they ask, but I just try to share our life and what we do in a very genuine, real, authentic way. I don't hide the bad stuff. I think that's important. I try to share the good and the bad and walk through what we're doing. And that's led to some opportunities for me to do some different things. I was recently chosen to participate as one of 10 part of a new program called the Trailblazers to represent the beef checkoff for the coming year. And through that program, I was just recently given the opportunity to do an interview with a journalist who resides in Brooklyn, New York, and writes for a website that probably none of you have heard of. I really hadn't. It's called Pop Sugar. It was an interesting day that I got to share their front page with Jennifer Lopez and Ben's upcoming wedding. And then here was this little, fifth generation cattle rancher in Wyoming picture that was totally, not a part of what their readership would normally do. But to have those opportunities and to be able to, reach out to the people who are so far removed and have no idea what we do, I feel really lucky to be able to give a voice to all of you in the room. And hopefully I do that well some days, at least.
Thanks, Casey. I mean, as we can all see, these are three women with very different experiences, but some common threads there of sharing both the good and the bad, taking an approach of sort of total authenticity and honesty and really connecting with your audience there. Our first question, and I guess we might start with you there, Casey, if you don't mind. What are some of the most stubborn preconceived notions that you've encountered? And I ask that because I think everyone in the room could probably think of one thing that comes up over and over again that they have to talk to their neighbors about, or somebody outside, further down the road, maybe antibiotic use or sustainability or whatever it might be. And the example that jumps to mind for me is one of my friends in Washington, D.C., who is not involved in agriculture, asked one time, why do they leave the cows outside? Don't they get cold? So that was an interesting sort of perspective check on sort of where the starting point for some of these conversations are. So what are some of the preconceived notions that seem most tenacious to you and that you've had to deal with over and over again?
So I'll be honest, I think the most stubborn people I deal with are actually within our industry. In some of the different, if anybody's ever heard me or met me or known me or in anything that I have written, I'm very opinionated and I'm not afraid to tell you what I think. And sometimes I ruffle some feathers, and generally that's with my own people, and that's okay. I don't mind. But, you know, I think being from Wyoming, of course, I always get asked the typical, so you still use horses to like go to the grocery store? No, we actually do have vehicles at school and highways and electricity and running water just like you do. But I definitely think, you know, as I winter in urban areas, as I've had the opportunity to gain a lot of friendships with people who live in places like Dallas and Houston. And, you know, one of my very best friends grew up in Compton, California. So, you know, to have those conversations with people outside of agriculture, of course, they get really concerned about things like antibiotic use, that we're all just pumping them full of drugs and that, you know, we don't care. And it's all about money and the bottom line. I think that is really kind of a difficult thing, that everything we do is just somehow money driven, which it's not. And then I think the other really bad preconceived notion that I find that I get asked a lot about is this concept that big is bad. And so, you know, for me to have the conversation, the size of an operation is truly dependent on the location of the operation. You know, if I were to have a conversation with somebody from Florida or West Virginia, and I were to casually mention accidentally how big our operation is in Wyoming, and in Wyoming, you know, we only have a small to medium sized operation, but they just look at you and they're like, oh my God, you must be a corporation and I'm like, nope, it's me and dad out there with the cows every day, right? Like we're barely keeping our heads above water. We don't have this huge staff and all of these people. And so I think really what I find is the conversation centers around this notion that big is bad. If you have more than 25 cows, you're bad. If you have more than 50 acres, you're bad. And so how do I navigate that conversation and trying to help them understand that you could have 1,000 cows and run on 50,000 acres and it's still just your family. And that doesn't make you bad. It makes you a nature of where you are and your ability to survive in the environment that you call home.
Penny, I wonder what you would say to that idea of the big is bad, because obviously you're communicating on behalf of producers in Montana with sort of a similar dynamic, not exactly the same, but also very much in the big ballpark. How do you, you know, work with other states, other state associations, other state PLCs who are maybe, you know, in a smaller geographic area, or even like Casey mentioned, some folks on the East Coast or in the Southeast who are dealing with these very different types of operations and making sure that across the board, regardless of size, we're all telling a similar story and pushing towards the same goals.
When you were telling your story, I've literally had someone who was on, you know, agriculture side tell me, well, you know, those Montana ranchers, they're not the factory farms. They're not big. They're doing it small. And I was just like, have you ever been to Montana? Like, that's not, and even the big farms, they're family owned. And I think the percentage 91 or something like that of American ranches are family owned, or farms and ranches. So I think what we do on a state level to kind of communicate that with other states, we share a lot, we communicate a lot with our other states. And you know, Montana Stock Growers as an association, we have a few tours that we like to bring some state and federal partners on, and just share that story while we're on that tour, because the tour is environmental focused, but we get some people from way outside of agriculture, some people who are adjacent to agriculture, to really talk about, like, this is what an actual ranch in Montana looks like. And it's not that different from its neighbor. They're doing the same sustainability practices. They all care about the land, and they're doing it on a big scale, because you have to do it on a big scale here to be economically viable. So that's kind of what we do. And then going back to the preconceived notions, I think one thing that I struggle with, that I hear a lot, is people think that we can just take cattle completely off the landscape. Like there no more cows. And I always get so frustrated with that, because I'm like, the logistical problems in general are way too much to make that even a thing. So what are you going to do with all those cattle? And cattle are a great way to like control the environment, like control the landscape and protect the landscape and grow the landscape. And so I just try to share that story. Like, did you know that, cattle on and grazing on public lands or on private lands, like that keeps wildlife diverse, it keeps plant diversity. It does a lot of really great stuff. And I think the people who are concerned about that issue, or they have that notion in their brain, they've never heard the other side. They've never been on a ranch. They've never seen it communicated to them, because they feel like it's a closed off industry. And I guess that's a little bit on our part to be a little bit more open. But yeah, I see it all. Antibiotics, all of that stuff. Yeah.
Gotcha. That's really interesting. Wendy, you've had massive success with the Pastoral Muse blog, and you've given TED Talks. You've reached a lot of different audiences in a lot of different parts of the country. And sort of, I guess, the flip side to the question we just asked before is there's some preconceived notions, but there's also some really passionate and enthusiastic interest from consumers today about livestock production. Are there any specific parts of ranch life or beef production that you find people are most interested in, and maybe that we're underselling as an industry currently?
That makes me think of probably the most common and most compelling comment I'll get is I felt like I was there with you when I talked about what I was doing on the ranch. And it can be so simple, you guys. I mean, it's like planting the garden or sending a kid off to college, cooking over the campfire. And I don't use flowery language or anything. It's not all that exciting. You guys would be bored if you read it, but I think they just want to connect. They want to see that we care and that we are passionate about our families and our kids. And I was thinking when we're talking about misconceptions, I did one TEDx talk. It's just a local, but the point I was kind of trying to make with that is we talk about carbon and we talk about greenhouse gas emissions. And I was trying to point out to folks, the carbon that's been laid down eons ago from old plant life and animal life, that's a one-way extraction. We're taking it out of the ground and up into the atmosphere. And cows cycle. It's a natural cycle. And I kind of think people can grasp that. And I kind of think that's what carbon's gotten so sexy. I think we can use it if we talk about that natural cycle.
Carbon is sexy is something I didn't think we were going to hear, but I love it. I'm stealing that. I'm going to use that. All of you so far have mentioned in one way or another the fact that, these are family businesses and you're doing this work with people that you love and care about every day. And we all, know, I'm sure, in your family, someone who is the talker, who has all of the stories about where your family's been, where you're going, and what, has been done on the operation. But not everybody wants to be in front of a camera, and not everybody wants to, hop on and update the blog every day. What are some of the ways that you approach gathering that information and sort of matching a specific medium to a specific message? And Kenny, if we could start with you, maybe from a practical standpoint, if there's a lot of folks out there who know that they have these stories, they have this information, where do I get started? Do I start a social media channel? Do I start a blog? Do I start a podcast? How do you go about figuring out the right platform for the talkers?
I could probably talk about this for a long time, but I'll try to keep it concise. So along the lines of platforms, I was thinking about this question when you first reached out, and I think it just really depends on what you're comfortable with. So if you're better at writing, that blog post is going to be great for you. You might need to cross post it, but if you're better on camera and you want to connect really emotionally with your audience, I think video is a great way to do that. I know the word TikTok is scary, but that it's a great way to get short snippets of your lifestyle. And so I think, like, are you asking like from a rancher, like a one generation to the next, like on their ranch to, connect those stories, or?
Sure. And
Yeah.
maybe, and obviously open it up to everybody here, but maybe if you've encountered a neighbor or a, member of
Yeah.
stock growers or something who said, I have a story,
Yeah.
where should I plug in? You start with that interest of, are you
Yeah.
better on camera? Are you more
Yeah.
comfortable writing? Is there any other sort of practical support
Yeah.
in putting together a plan to help that person get out
Yeah.
there and start talking?
Yeah. So for me at Stock Growers, I'm usually behind the camera asking the questions. I'm mostly interviewing people for our environmental stewardship award, but I do a little bit of other stuff. So some practical stuff that I've learned of being the interviewer, and it doesn't, you don't have to be doing some big project. If you just want a audio history or a video history of your ranch, you can do this and set up a camera and go. But I always like to, if it's a subject not known to me, not a family member or stuff like that, I like to first build a relationship with that person, really explain to them, I'm on your side. I'm not going to make you look stupid in this interview. I'm on ag side. And then I always tell them, if you need a second to like take a break, and really think about a question that might have stumped you, I allow them that time. And you'd be surprised at how many people, like, once you give them that permission, they take a break, they kind of mull it over in their heads, and then they come up with really great, concise answers, which is what you want on video, especially. And then I think just telling the story, if you want to get your family's story or something like that. One question that I've started to ask that has really changed the game for me as an interviewer has been, can you just take me through your year, month by month or season by season? Because I found I was asking the question, like, what does every day look like for you? And I don't think I've ever gotten any different answer than it's different every day. That's one answer I always get. And like I always say, it's different every day. And that's what I like about this job. And that feels so good. But to consumers or anybody outside, that's a dead end road. Like, if you're not uniquely aware of that operation, then that's, nothing else. But it feels nice that they enjoy their job. So I've started to get really specific. So if I'm going to ask a day, I say, what does a day look like in calving for you? What does a day look like in shipping? Or what does your month look like? Because in ranching, seasons change the different type of work you do. So I say, start in January. And what do you do in January? What do you do in February? What do you do in March? Like, are you calving in March? Are you, shipping in the fall? Are you that kind of stuff? So that question specifically has really changed the game for me, because I start pulling out all of this information that I don't think I would have got beforehand. So, and I think this can be implemented to your relatives or your friends or your neighbors or anything like that. And I like this question too, because one, it gives me a better idea of what that ranch kind of cycle is, and it gives me a really great insight into that ranch. But I think there's this really big disconnect, like I think I kind of mentioned that before, but a disconnect from our consumers. They're 3 or 4 generations removed from the ranch. They know the calf gets born and then it ends up on their plate, and there's a lot of stuff in the middle of that they are concerned about, but they don't know what's actually happening. And so going through that cycle and saying, here's all the stuff that ranchers do to protect their livestock, to protect their landscape, I think is a really great story. And I think that story can be tailored to a lot of different platforms, depending on what message you want. So some publications or channels are a lot more formal. So like Stock Growers, we use Facebook to be a little bit more formal, Instagram to be a little bit more formal. TikTok and Twitter, you can kind of have like a more conversation-based discussion. Twitter, kind of a debate sometimes. But I think it just depends on what audience you want to reach and what message you want to say in that.
Matt, yeah, tailoring that to your audience makes a lot of sense. Casey and Wendy, you've been on the other side of that equation. Kenny's preparing people for those interviews, preparing them for those video opportunities. Maybe if we can start with Casey and then go to Wendy, you've been preparing for Pop Sugar and you just knocked that one out. A little bit of an unusual platform, but what were the steps that you did personally to prepare for that? Because I think there's a lot of leadership in this room. There's a lot of very experienced folks who I know that Caitlin and I bug all the time to hop on the phone with a reporter or go, talk to somebody. So what do you do to prepare in those when you get those asks?
I'm probably going to have a disappointing answer for you. So I used to be a public speaking teacher at college. I traumatize kids all the time, and extension, different things. I have a degree in communications. And so, I learned how to write newspaper articles and press releases and all that stuff. So I've been fortunate, just my path has led me to become very prepared. And I'm one of those just insane people. I thrive on public speaking. Like if I could do this every day, I'd be the happiest person on the planet. And most people
we can make that happen.
Wouldn't want to do this if you paid them. And I'm like, I'll do it for free. So I know, right? So, I think for me, there was a difference, I think, in teaching people to do it and to try to help them, with tips and tricks to be comfortable. And, I think one thing I would say, anything that's authentic and genuine, even if your voice is shaking, is still going to translate, I think being very real in those experiences, I try to stay very educated in terms of keeping a database in my head. What do you want to know about nutrition? What do you want to know about sustainability? What do you want to know about greenhouse gas emissions? And I have prepared myself to have all of those conversations so that if someone walks up to me or someone reaches out to me on social media, I can have that conversation and I can provide that information. I can regurgitate those facts. Going through the MBA program, being a top of the class participant, now being a trailblazer, I've had the opportunity to have some more intensive training, particularly with interacting with media and being able to have those interviews and, not getting myself backed into a corner that you can't find your way out of. But I think, my advice is, I think particularly in today where we get so focused on social media, we forget that there are a million other ways to advocate every single day. And we used to say that we represented 2% of the population. Well, we now represent 1.5% of the population. And no matter what the three of us do, we aren't enough. So you have to help us. You have to participate. You don't have to participate the way that we do. Whether you're just comfortable having a conversation with someone in church or someone you encounter in the grocery store that you see struggling at the meat case, or whether you're willing to go visit your local school and have a conversation with those kids, whether you're willing to open your operation up to a farm tour or a ranch tour and invite particularly young kids to get to see it because, right, they think it's so cool. And you have the opportunity to kind of set their path for what they're going to think in the future, particularly if you can tie it to some sort of STEM-based curriculum that the school needs to, check off their list. But it's having conversations. It's not that you have to be on the news. You can leave that to me because I'll love that. But, can you write an op-ed for your local paper and get that published? Can you, just be willing to answer questions in your community when people have them? There's so many paths and so many ways that I think everybody can find something that fits within their comfort zone, where they don't necessarily have to be thrust in front of a camera or sitting here on a microphone. If you don't like to write, you can talk. If you don't like to talk, you can write. If you don't like large groups, find a small one. Find one person to have a conversation with. Because I really do think it's more, those one-on-one conversations are honestly more effective than me being on social media talking to a couple thousand people every day. Because at the end of the day, it really is all about relationship building first and creating trust second, and then they will be willing to listen third. So that's just my opinion.
I love that. And I think that your answer also really highlights the importance of those relationships that we have with other organizations like NCBA, you're doing the advocacy program there with Montana Stock Growers, with Idaho Cattlemen's. I mean, there are a lot of people out there who, if you don't know where to plug in, and you don't know if you want to do that TV interview, or whether you'd rather write an op-ed or do something different, there are a lot of folks out there who want to help match you with the right opportunity and make sure that it's something that you're comfortable with. Wendy, I wonder if you could start us off here for one of our last questions before we open it up a little bit. Caitlin and I go in every single room and we have the tagline, grazing is good, right? That's become our mantra, if only because if I don't say it, Caitlin tases me and then I have to say it. So grazing is good has become the new go-to line everywhere in all of our conversations, and it works. It sticks with people. It's simple. It conveys a lot in a small package. If you had to give folks today leaving the room one slogan or one tagline that sort of you have found works and resonates with people, what would you distill that down to? What are the core essentials that you drill down on when you're talking to people?
That's not fair, Sigrid. This is brand new. Okay, I gotta say.
Or it could be a longer one. It could be more than 3
Well,
words.
You know what came to mind was good grazing is good.
Love that.
You
We
know,
have to amend it.
I
Caitlin.
guess I think we as an industry need to acknowledge upfront that it's, as we talked about last night, it's the intermittent grazing with the recovery period in the middle during the growing season. That is key.
Yeah. And so when you're having those conversations with folks who might be unfamiliar with how a system like that works and what exactly, the impact is on the land, I think Casey, you touched on another sort of important element there, which is there are people, unfortunately, who want to back you into a corner. And I think the number one response that we get sometimes from when we reach out to a producer or some of the people who we have here today and say, I could carve out the time. Nobody ever has time, right? But I could carve out the time. I know what I would say, but I don't want to do it because I think that I'm going to get backed into a corner. When some of those things happen, or when you get the question like that, Wendy, where it's like, well, but how is that really helping? And you're getting pushed a little bit more. How do you sort of navigate out of those corners and get back to a productive conversation and sort of get the conversation back on track? Is that something you've had a little bit of experience with?
Not really.
Fair enough.
But let me tell you, I think, let's think about what we've done in our past to get us here, to build our capacity as good land managers, as communicators, as leaders. And what can we take home? I look around and, you're my age or older, and what can we take home to our kids, our community? How can we build the capacity with our youth in our own industry? I really don't have experience in that, but the best thing I can say is be educated about your industry and don't say yes. Don't be afraid of those confrontations. Usually they just want to know you care. And if you can communicate that you care about the animals and the land and the people, you'll be okay. You'll come out the other side. And some of those people won't ever be convinced, but there's a big old margin in the middle that can come on your side because they're just like you.
You said you didn't have much of an answer. That was a fantastic answer. And I think I'm just keeping an eye on our time here, but I think that, in all of your answers, we've seen a lot of common threads of being prepared too, really being on the ball and being ready with those facts for when you get one of the harder questions or when you get one of the more controversial topics like carbon or sustainability or antibiotic use. And I think that that's just a great testament to the work that you have all done to prepare yourselves for those conversations whenever they might come up, whether it's in the grocery store or in church or in front of a TV camera. But also I think a great challenge to all of us to stay on top of those facts, stay on top of those talking points. And again, I'm going to give a shameless plug for the organizations and the partners we have in the room. There are a lot of people involved at ASI, at ANG, NatGLC, NCBA, and every state affiliate that we have who have those documents ready to go. And you all know your operations best. You are the expert on what's going on your ground. But if you want that concise set of points that you want to take out to those conversations, hop on the phone, ping Kenny, ping any of us, ping Caitlin or I. We'll get you connected with that information so that nobody's ever backed into a corner that they can't get out of. So I want to give a huge round of applause to our panelists, and thank you so much for coming. And next, I'm going to turn it over to Mark to introduce our next speaker.
Well, let's give Sigrid and our panelists one more round of applause. That was great. I want to thank you for taking the time to share your insight on advocates, effective advocates. Before we move to the break, we're going to take a few minutes to hear from Eric Davis from the Forest Service, Washington office. Eric Davis is the Assistant Director of Rangeland Management and Restoration with the Forest and Rangeland Management and Vegetation Ecology staff in Washington, D.C. His portfolio includes rangelands management, wild horses and burros, grasslands, collaborative forest landscape restoration, invasive species, tribal coordination. Prior to the U.S. Forest Service, he worked 16 years with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, specializing in endangered species and migratory bird conservation. Eric was born and raised in Greensboro, North Carolina, earned a BA in biology from Duke University, an MS in biology from the University of North Carolina, Charlotte, and an MA in National Security and Strategic Studies from the Naval War College. From 2009 to 2010, he commanded a combat logistics battalion of 900 Marines and sailors in Iraq. He's a retired Marine Corps colonel. Eric loves to travel and has visited every continent. Eric, we want to thank you for your service and for joining us today. Come on up.
Thank you. I dressed up more for the other picture. Well, thank you. This has been a great meeting. I'm ready for my Yellowstone trip. That's what I'm dressed up for today. Wife is flying in this afternoon. So, well, first of all, it's great to be back in person. It's been a long 2.5 years, and we have missed the meeting people. You just can't replicate that online. And I was fortunate to go to the ASI meeting in February, and that was, I believe, the first non-fire travel for the Forest Service since coronavirus. And this fall is just packed because everybody's having their meetings again, and that's a good thing. We need to reconnect. I know that in the last 3 years, our range staff in the Washington office has turned over completely. I think we have the best team we've ever had, and we're going to try to take some of the things that I've heard from this meeting. One of them was, there's always an anecdote about somebody in the field not getting it, and it's a little hard for somebody in the Washington office to make sure that in an organization of 32,000 people that everyone will do everything right all the time. That's hard for me to make happen. But we're going to start having cafes where we have a theme. Bonnie and I were talking about this morning about we're just going to put a webinar out for anyone in the Forest Service in the field. And the topic this Tuesday is the risk to contact model. And we'll take any question. But most people out there want to do the right thing. Some are uninformed. And as we heard yesterday, some are opposed, and, they are there. And that's where we can help. I learned throughout my military career, when you have a problem with somebody, the easiest thing to do is ignore them. But that's the worst thing to do. You'll only cement in their mind what they already believe. I was having breakfast with Jerry, and he gave me some words of wisdom. Like, if all you ever do is talk to people you agree with, you never learn anything. And I think that all of us can take that to heart. The easiest thing to do is to spend time with people who already agree with everything you think. And I'm sure that I know that happens, in government agencies. I think it also happens in organizations like this, and we have to do the things like the three ladies were just talking about. We need to get out there and show people, and get that trust first, and I think we can change minds. I mean, it's easy to be a single issue person, but that's multiple use is a great goal. I mean, people might not like mining, but they sure like air conditioning, and that they sure like being able to plug in their phones, and we need to make those connections so that people understand how, the ranching starts and how it ends up on your table, or how the mining of rare earth metals is important for batteries, for solar power, or for your phone, or whatever. And I think that groups like this it's a great opportunity for the information exchange. I know I've learned a lot being here this week. It's hard to, when you're on travel a lot, you lose track of the days. This has been educational for me. I hope it has been helpful to you too. Do you want me to ask if there are any questions, or if we have time? Okay. That's really all I was going to present. Does anyone have any questions for me? I see a woman in the back.
I really like the idea of the webinar. We did try that in Wyoming. We have a memorandum of understanding between stock growers and bull growers and the foresters, and we tried that, and it didn't go anywhere because of the approval process. So I hope it works. I think it's a great idea.
Thank you. And not all ideas work. Sometimes it's the right idea at the wrong time. Yeah, sometimes it's just not a great idea, but we're going to try it. I hope it works. If we help a couple of people out there who just weren't aware, then I'll call it a success. That's what I think leadership is at the national level. We aren't often in my staff, making the decisions about permits. We are providing counsel and pointing people to the regulations and where the flexibility is, where the limits are. So we'll keep trying. I see Jerry.
I want to really thank you for our visit today and your presence here. Sure gives us all hope and confidence in Washington, D.C. for those that didn't have very much. But anyway, you've mentioned several times about, I think I refer to them as directives that have come and may be coming out of your office. And I guess I was wondering how we might be able to have access to those, so we can help our local ranger become more informed and just be able to work with them closer.
Right. So for everyone, if you couldn't hear it, he asked, how can he and your group and others be involved in helping us write our directives? So we work with, I know I saw Caitlin somewhere. There we go. You know, we reach out to partners. Sometimes there's a Federal Register notice requirement. Not that anyone in here actually reads the Federal Register, maybe other than Caitlin. Sorry, Sigrid, maybe you too. You know, but when we have known stakeholders, we do reach out. We usually try to have an internal discussion within, you know, agency folks, and then partner meeting, and often a tribal discussion. And you know, everyone has a different idea about how things should be worded, and you know, sometimes it's happy or glad and doesn't really matter, but some people get very excited about it, and sometimes it's much more substantial. And you know, we really do try to get it right. As I think I said yesterday, we update our directives. It's a big deal. Last time we updated the directives were 30 years ago, and the directives are our instructions to our staff, you know, so that there's consistency throughout the agency. You know, it's a big undertaking. It's going to take 2.5 years to do just the, you know, the range directives. And we're doing it sort of chapter by chapter, and involving partners at each one. Well, the relative, you know, not everyone would be interested in every chapter, but we try. And that doesn't mean you're always going to be happy. But I mean, there's no one, when you create a rule or a directive, I think what you've done about right when everyone is equally happy and disappointed. Yeah. Sir.
Okay, Angie, thank you again for being here also, and Casey last couple days for the Spearfish. Casey had brought up something at the NG meeting that, you know, this is a long process as you're referring to. And when I went through and just kind of did a skeleton brief read of some of the comments that came in when the comment period was, I believe it was April last year when that ended. You know, you read the Sierra Club, you read the North Dakota comments back, they're all pointing to like there's an intermixture of, there's a blending of policies, I believe, that the AG has certain specifications that we need to deal with. The Forest Service permits, like the mountains and stuff, have other certain requirements that are specific to their permits. And there was kind of a blending of those things. And that was a concern both for the environmental people and for the ranching industry. Is that going to try to be more clarified as you go into these directives? And also, he alluded to maybe there would be a comment period on this, maybe somewhere in the future as they came out. So that's my question.
You know, you point to a struggle of how much do you want local decision making, you know, from agency people versus edicts from Washington, and that's always a struggle. I'll say that I think that the best thing that we can do at Washington is to delineate clear decision space, and you know, what's acceptable. You know, it's within here. You know, going out here, that is, you know, that is outside of our policy. I think we always try to involve stakeholders. You know, there are a lot of external factors. You know, there, as you know, there are laws that pertain to the Dakota Prairie Grasslands that don't pertain to the rest of the National Forest System. You know, so that's something we can't change. we have to work within that parameter. It's going to be an exciting, we got the rule just finished, and now we're heading into the directives. It will be an exciting 2 years, and I know we have the staff. We have the right people in place at the Washington office. Oh yeah, Chapter 80 is about grazing fees, and it implements the rule. So that's the first one we're doing, and then on down the line. So it's rather than have just one humongous period where people give us feedback, it would be pretty disappointing if you gave feedback and we didn't get to that chapter for 2 years. So we're doing this in stages, and we would involve everyone at each stage. That's actually how we're doing it internal too. Like we have a webinar just with the Forest Service folks. We're just talking about chapter whatever, and then 3 months later, we have multiple in the queue, but sort of every 3 months we will be rolling out the next chapter with internal and external comments. Ma'am.
Thank you for being here.
Happy to be here.
Our ranch is right on the Mexican border.
Okay.
5.5 miles of the border is U.S. forest. Lease land that we use for grazing. Our cowboys have refused to go to some of those pastures this last year because one was beaten up and robbed, and yet you see this is a constant impact on those lands and on the use of those lands.
Right.
Why is there no mention by the Forest Service of this impact? It's a different by saying nothing. Oh, one can say, well, that's not our responsibility, but it is because it's a huge impact. My husband has calculated the tons of garbage left, and based on Border Patrol figures of how much each person leaves behind and how many people they recognize have gone through there, which does not include the ones that are on our hidden cameras, which we maintain on those lands. How can the Forest Service make it apparent to the administration that that is an impact on the water sources, on wildlife, on we're not supposed to graze in an exclusion for the Sonora chub, a listed species, but the folks packing drugs come right through it. So is it our impact? Sorry, the person fixing the fence on the border is sitting right next to me.
Man by man.
So these are daily impacts on our life. They are threats. When my husband goes out into one of those pastures, I have to hold and pray he gets back.
Wow, I can't believe I finally got a question that relates to both the degrees in biology and national security. I've been waiting a career for this. I'm sorry you're going through what you're going through. I will say I haven't heard of that issue. I'm assuming you're in Arizona or New Mexico. Yeah. So let me let me talk to the regional director. That is, as you can imagine, that is an area that we can influence, but not control. But let me see what I can do. All right. Thank you all.
Well, thank you, Eric. Thanks for being here and always being available, community partner in DC. Just a few notes before we take a short break and move to our committee meetings. Dr. Jeff Herrick from ARS is going to be holding a workshop on rangeland monitoring and the Agricultural Research Services work on an app to make monitoring easy. You can join Jeff and Nels in Taggart 1 to discuss monitoring. The grazing committee will meet from 9:15 or so to 10:40 in Taggart 2 and 3. We'll have a quick break after those two sessions, and then multiple use committee will meet in Taggart 2 and 3 at 10:45. Once the committee wraps up, meet us back here for lunch. We'll have a bite to eat and hear more about some of the Washington advocacy of our partner organizations. So with that, we'll conclude for right now, take a break and pick your spots you want to go to. Thank you.
There to pull you out.